I'm running on clay time. Oops.
If you run on clay time, we'd see you tomorrow.
Ooh. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We get a roll call, please.
Whitus, Fenton,
Here.
Buckley,
Here.
Pinkley,
Here.
Yancey,
Here.
Romine,
Here.
Denham, Milton,
Here.
Dobbins.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Well, the first item on the agenda, pull my agenda up here, is the approval of the Finance Committee minutes for December 3rd regular meeting and January 13th regular meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We'll move into the presentation of our regular reports from Jamie.
Thank you. We're going to discuss the sales tax first, and you all, this is as of the end of November. So for the sales tax as of the end of November, we're talking about September actual sales. You can see that we are 37.9% up over 2020. I did the calculation for 2019 as well. We are 16.6% over 2019. One of the things that I have been researching, and I wanted to explain some of these things to you, and most of all of you are aware of this, that the inflation ended 2021 at 7%, which is very, very high. So while, yes, these are good numbers, what I wanted to make sure that you all understood is that the inflation was at the highest it's been in a very long time for 2021. So we do have to consider those. And when we look at these numbers, we also have to consider some of the other issues that 2021 was faced with. So when we're looking at these and we're thinking, yes, we have more cash than we did, just consider the value of $1 a couple of years ago versus now, and those issues when you're looking at that. I'm not trying to be a negative Nelly. I'm just trying to put it back into the perspective of where the money is at today versus where it was a few years ago. And everybody I know that is aware of that. I just wanted to mention that. Okay, we will go transportation is 38.4%. Same issues apply there. And then public safety tax, 38.5% over 2020 and 17.2% over 2019. The tourism tax, again, this is for September activity, and you can see that it's 104% over 2020. It's 32% over 2019. You know that tourism was hit the hardest as a result of the pandemic, and we did have a decline of about 34% in 2020, so you have to consider that as well. So, but if you look at the dollar value received across the board, you can see that that's by far the largest that we have received at that point in time. But remember, there are all those other economic factors that we have to consider when looking at those dollars. The next report is the tourism or tax receipt breakdown. This is a good report. This shows you the categories for the tourism and shows you where they fall. We did put a line in there for the 2019 comparison and the 2020, so you could really gauge real true business, because 2020, Lord willing, was an anomaly for us. Okay, is there any questions to that point so far? I know it's pretty self-explanatory, but there are several things that I just wanted to bring to your attention. Okay, so we'll keep moving. The next is the rolling sales. The first one is the monthly, so month over month, and that's based upon your tax receipts. The receipts, and just as a reminder, we put those sales back into the reporting period, okay? So this is a good picture on the receipts. The next report is a good picture on the total sales. The next report shows you as if the year ended in August 21, in August, year over year, where we would have fell, on that, and the categories in which they fell in. So the first one is your monthly tax receipts based on what we receive, and that would be monthly. The second one is in terms of year and in terms of economic. growth for the city. So these are really good reports to look at if you're looking for economy and the perspective on that. And then we will keep moving if there's no questions. This one is the not restricted to TIF. These are the reports. We did one for sales and one for tourism. And this basically shows you where the TIF is, how much money's collected. You're able to tie back the total receipts. Then we remove the TIF, and then it shows you actually what's remaining after the TIF payments and those kind of things. And you can see that we are at an increase of about 2.7 year to date over that. And same terms, economy, that all applies as well. And what this should show you is while the TIF districts are doing good, the other areas of the city are holding their own and doing well also. Okay. This one is for the tourism net restricted of TIF. And as you can see, it's about 5.6 million over. And just remember, 2020 tourism was down 34%. That's where we landed for the year. Okay. If there's no questions on that, we'll keep moving. Kind of worried. Y'all are kind of quiet today. Okay. All right. This one is the monthly budget report. Just laying this one out. This one is basically what we projected for the year. And we went through and we do a 5-year comparison, and then we give you a percentage, average percentage for the month of where we would expect that budget to fall month to month. And so it gives you a gauge of what we could expect on a month and how we can track our budget. Okay, so we projected for 2021 for the sales tax 9.5 million. If y'all recall, what we said was we were going to start to gradually increase back to 2019 in our budget. So because we were unsure when we were putting that 2021 budget together about the economy and where it was going to fall. So we projected 9.5 million for that, and that's where we fell. To date, right now, as you can see, for the sales tax, we're at 12.4 million, so we are at 45% over where we had projected for budget. And then this will be the tourism. The reason why we do these reports, and I know I explain this every month, but the reason why we do these reports is because we are such a large tourism city. More than 80%, I would say, is tourism related. And so it's not you can't do a straight line budget. We give you those straight line numbers when we give you your financials just for you to gauge that. But it's really more, our largest months are in obviously the summer months versus the winter months. And so it's for you to gauge where we should fall on a month-to-month basis in terms of the budget. Again, this is tourism. We projected 7.3 million. Obviously, we have surpassed that. Right now, we're at 136% of where we had anticipated to be for the budget. We are conservative. We did that for a reason because of so many of the unknowns. Remember, when we were putting together the 2021 budget, we were still in the middle of the pandemic in the fall of 2020. So there was a lot of unknowns. So we felt, and you all were a part of this, that to be conservative was the best route for us.
Jamie, I know we've had another little problem last month with Department of Revenue. I heard yesterday that Hollister had the same issue.
Yes,
I know DOR just got a new director.
I heard that.
I know you contacted them, your department did. We feeling comfortable with that they're actually going to try to figure out what the problem was and correct it?
So the Department of Revenue, I will say to you, you know this, but I will say to this group, we have problems with them on a weekly basis.
I know.
And I'm hopeful. However, we are still dealing with the same ones, and I email the assistant director quite frequently on some of the issues, and he's always quick to respond and to try and help resolve some of the problems. I'm hopeful. I will say I don't want to be a negative Nelly again, but the director may be at a higher level. I would say that I'm hopeful that maybe he talks to the ones below. Some of the issues are just, in my opinion, silly. Because when they send us the money, the monthly money, what they send to our bank account should tie back to the reports they send to support the amount they've put into our bank. Would you all agree with that? And so when the reports that we receive don't tie back to what's hit our bank, that's a red flag. And so they don't even reconcile the money that they're putting into our accounts with their reports before they send it to us. I've had to ask that multiple times. That should be a very simple accounting process, that before you release funds, you know what you're releasing and why. That should not be a hard, fast request, in my opinion. But we've addressed that several times, so.
One of the things that Hollister told me yesterday, Rick told me yesterday, was that they only received sales tax money for Menards and did not receive it for Lowe's and several businesses. My problem, I guess, what I'm not grasping from the Department of Revenue is those businesses, they're not moving, they're not rotating around. I can't understand why they're.
I can answer that as well, because there are many times on the reports that we receive, we get line item businesses from other areas, and not just from Hollister, from other places, or they get our line item businesses. And so fortunately, with the staff we have a model built that we can look at that and see that very quickly. Not a lot of other cities have that, but they're line items that don't even belong in our city district that sometimes hit our report, line items. So there would be times where we would receive the Lowe's and Hollister and we'd be like, no, I'm sorry, this doesn't go in our district.
Let's put together that report with what you were just talking about, and let's send it to the new director just
Sure.
as a heads up, and tell him this is an issue we've been dealing with for some time now that we would like to see.
You could also attach the many, many emails we've had too,
Right.
no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so unless there's any questions, we can keep moving. That is the tax reports, and that's as of the end of November. We are in the process of closing the year right now. As many of you know, we have to wait until about the 4th week of January. We give businesses that long to get all their invoices in so that we can make sure we properly capture the expense in the year that it occurred. We are modified accrual, which basically means we're on a cash basis through the year. At the end of the year, we true it up with all the accruals that belong in the proper year. So it takes us a bit longer to close December and the year. Okay, so this is the general fund as of the end of November. And there's a couple of things that I want to discuss on here this morning. So 20.5 million versus 16.6 in 2020 and 19.2 in 2019. Obviously, you can gauge that the taxes and franchise are up. Your license and permit fees are up as well. Your interest income is up even in this time, so that's really good. And then we had those miscellaneous revenues, and so you can see that our revenues are trending up, which is where we expect them to be. And then your expenditures are at 7.6 versus 7.5 in 2020 and 7.3 in 2019. A couple of things that I want to talk about on here. The American Rescue Plan, you know that we did the stipend checks. And when we did the stipend checks, all of the money for the American Rescue Plan goes into a separate fund and a separate cash account. So then we had to transfer the money into the proper funds to offset the expense. One of the things that we did, all of the expense categories are correct, so all of the money has offset. You'll see that transfer in from the American Rescue Plan down at the financing sources. And you'll see it in the proper actual expense account and where they occurred. But for the budget, when we did the budget amendment, we put all the budget monies for the general fund in one account. So you'll see some of the budget versus actuals skewed. So if you scroll up, almost all of we put the budget in scroll down, yeah. We put the budget in the administration account, so the majority of the budget went there, but the expenses are all in the proper category. So that percent used will be skewed. We are truing that up for year end, and it'll be budget versus actual be corrected and trued up for the next time that you see this. But I just wanted to let you know, because of the timing, we put the budget dollars when we did the transfer in one account, but everything else is trued up. So when you look at the budget, you think, why are they over this amount, or why are they over this amount? That's why. Okay, keep going. Then the transfer ends. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not done with general fund just yet. If you'll scroll back up to the transfer sources. And then you can look at, there's the American Rescue Plan on the sources and uses. There's your tourism transfer in. That's what I talked about. There's your convention center transfer out. And obviously you can see all of those, the public safety fund, the code enforcement, all of those. And at the end, the fund balance reserve as of the end of November is at 10.3 million. Now I'm done, unless there's any questions with the general fund.
So Jamie,
Yes.
part of your explanation, so if you go back up to expenses and categories
Sure.
that are basically where they're tracking a sizable amount under the budget, then when that's trued up, some of that might switch back the other way.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We did that because of the timing and how we had to put it in. The budget amendment all came before the board. That was all trued up. The expenses are in the proper category. It was just the budget. And so we reported to you where we put it, so it'll look skewed on this report until we true and get the budgets back in the proper categories where they are.
make sure I was
Yes, sir.
tracking,
That's a good question. Unless there's more questions, we'll keep going. The Public Safety Fund, you can see the total revenues are at 6.2 million versus 4.9 in 2020 and 5.4 in 2019. And that's a large part due to the taxes, and you can see the interest income is more than double what we anticipated for that as well. Again, this is a summary of both of the departments. We have also attached for you the breakdown of each department as well, and we'll go through that here in just a second. If you want to scroll down there, the expenditures are at 9.6 versus 9.7 in 2020 and 10.6 in 2019. And then the financing sources, 5.3 million versus 5.4, and in 2019 is 6.9. Remember, for last year, the subsidy was reduced due to the pandemic at the 25%. Since then, in 2022, you will see it goes back up and it's fully funded, okay? So, and you can see the American Rescue Plan down there, the transfer in, the 716, you can see that, and you will see that for all of the funds where we did the stipend as well. The unreserved fund balance for both public safety funds is a little more than 8 million. And then this is a breakdown. This is the police fund, and then the next one will be the fire department fund. Both of these roll up into the summary. You'll be able to tie those back, but this is just a look and a picture of how both of those funds are doing. So the taxes and the franchise and even the interest income, you can see all of that. 3.4 million. When we start getting more history, you'll start having more history on these reports as well. Okay, this is the first year that we broke them down. Total expenditures are at 5.4 million, and then you can see your other financing sources at a little more than 3 million. And we broke down the American Rescue Plan for you as well, so that you can see that. And then at the end, the unreserved fund balance is 4.3 million as of the end of November. Okay, this is the look at the fire department. This is the total revenues for fire, 2.8 million. And the same thing applies. We broke it down. Interest income, they're still doing very well on their side as well. If you scroll down, you can see the expenses and then their transfer ins and their American Rescue Plan amount as well. Remember, public safety was at 10%, all others were at 5%, so theirs will be a little bit larger. The unreserved fund balance is at 3.6 million for the fire department. This is a look at the convention center. You have revenues at 3.6 million versus 1.9 last year and 4.7 the prior year. So if you take a look, you can go through your expenditures and you can see, if you scroll down, I'm moving through this very quickly, so please feel free to stop me if you have any questions. We want to make sure and give time for everything on the agenda today. 3.7 million is the expenditures versus last year at 2020 was 3.1 and 4.9 for 2019. So you can gauge that their revenues are coming back and their expenditures aren't quite to where they used to be. So they're trying to do a good job of keeping that balance. So I would say that would be the picture that we look at today. And then you have the other financing sources, the amount that's transferred in from the general fund and the amount that comes in that they have spent for marketing so far as of the end of November for 2021. And their unreserved fund balance is at $664,113. This is the tourism tax, 15.3 million in tourism tax versus 7.9 in 2020 and 11.6 in 2019. Remember, that's the large income for the taxes. And then remember that intergovernmental, that reimbursement, that 201,000 that you see, that is a reimbursement for the water sewer capital projects. Okay, and so now we're looking at our expenditures. 4.9 million expenditures versus 4.5 and 8.1 in 2019. I will tell you that as of this month, we have paid off all the debt for the tourism fund. So you will see the principal payments, all of that, but as of January, the tourism fund is debt-free. The COP loans were paid off in December, and you'll see that after we close the year. And obviously, we did the refi, and then we've done the last bond payment was in January. So that should be some really good news that the tourism fund is debt-free as of right now. Okay, and so your other financing sources here are at 2.1 million versus 1.5 and 2.2 for the year before. And you can see the operating transfer in from Highway 76. If you want to look at that line, it's typically 500,000. That 500,000 is their payment to reimburse us back for the 9.2 from the Highway 76 project. The rest of that 1.2 is the undergrounding of the power lines that's going on as we speak. And you can see that operating transfer out to capital of the 1.2. That's a coming in and going out to the capital funds to account for that capital project for the undergrounding. Okay. Next one is the transportation fund. Not a ton going on in this fund. 6.6 million revenue versus 4.8 and 5.6 in 2019. Again, this year, we did split the interest, so they're going to have more interest income and intergovernmental, and so you'll see that coming into this fund as well. You can see the breakdown of all the different department expenditures, and then 2.5 million in expense versus 2.2 and 3.2 in 2019. And then your other financing sources, again, it is the same. The American Rescue Plan accounts for just putting back in what we spent for those stipends from the American Rescue Fund. 5.1 million in reserve in that fund as of the end of November. And then this is a look at your debt service funds. 12.3 million in revenue for that, 10.3 last year, and 11.1 the year before. So this is your TIF district, so that should gauge you that the TIF districts are doing well as well. And then you have your expenditures here of 11.6 million versus 18.3 and 11 the year before. And then you have your other financing sources, and this is where the money comes in and then goes back out to the trust to pay for all of our debt service, okay? You will see at the bottom line where it says the operating transfer out to Branson Meadows, that 1.8 million. That is the waterfall flow of funds. So I know I've talked to y'all about this many times over the years, but the TIF for the Branson Landing is basically has 3 bonds associated with it. And we have a waterfall flow of funds, and it just basically gives us 11 to 15 steps of when the revenue comes in, here's how you distribute it. And if we reach certain steps and we've already exceeded this step and this step and this step, then that money flows off to another bond, which is that Branson Meadows 2011 bond. This year, we've had 1.8 million flow off to that, which is really, really good. That's one of the highest years we've ever had. So I will tell you that that is a really good picture. Okay. And basically what that says is it's going to help us based on the bond indentures. It basically helps us pay off that debt for that other bond. And then this is a look at that fund, that 160 fund. And remember that TIF went away in 2018. So the more we have flow over to that, the more it helps. So if you look at the expenditures, and then that principal payment is due December 1, so you won't see that principal payment on this financial, but you will see it on the next financial. And if you scroll down, you can see that 1.8 that I was talking about, where it flows out of the debt services from the other TIF districts, and it flows into this one to help. And so the unreserved fund balance is at 5.9 million in that debt service fund. And we can keep moving. This is a look at your capital projects funds. This is just your capital projects and how we pay for them, and you can see that 1.2 million for the undergrounding is what we talked about as well. And if you want to scroll down, that is, there's 834,000 in that right now. The next one is the Perpetual Fund, not anything happening in there, so we'll keep moving. I believe the next one is your Parks Fund. Parks Fund, I did a couple of calculations here because if you look, total revenues, 2.1 million, as of the end of November versus 1.4 in 2020 and 1.8 in 2019. Just notice the campground at 1.1, almost 1.2 million versus 766,000 and 863,000. So you're at 34% increase over 2019 for the campground for this year. So that is a good picture to look at, just individual pieces. Also, the ballparks, the ball programs, the rents and leases, and the pool admissions were all considerably up. And so at the end result, their expenditures are at almost 2.3 versus 1.9 last year and 2.3 in 2019. So they're holding fast with their expenditures. If you look at it from a 2019 perspective, and their increases, their revenues are increasing quite a bit. So that's a picture when you look at your financials, revenues versus expenditures, and in comparison to years past, how are they doing? Their ending fund balance as of the end of November is a little less than 1.5 million.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay, so we'll keep moving to Water and Sewer Fund. Okay, so this is at 10.4 revenue versus 8.5 in 2020 and 8.6 in 2019. Consumption was up about 20%. And then also we did the rate increases at 2% and 7%. So those will all be accounted for in these revenue numbers. And then if you want to take a look at your expenditures, at 11.3 versus 10.6 in 2020 and a little more than 11 million in 2019. As you look at this, just remember the stipend is going to be involved in those expense categories, okay? And then you will see the American Rescue Plan revenue coming back in. So if you consider the stipend amount, you look at that, they're holding fast to their expenditures as well. That's what I wanted to explain to you. Remember, the unreserved fund balance is at 65.5 million. Mayor, the last time you asked me for that breakdown, and I have not sent that yet. I will get that out. I apologize for that. I recall you sent that. Okay, so this is your capital, your water sewer capital, and this is just how the large capital dollars, we're at 344,000, and that is the system connection charges. So when the large capital, we basically transfer it out from tourism. Mostly the large capital is accounted for that, and it goes into the 145 fund, and that's how we account for those capital projects. So if you will scroll down, the expenditures, the capital expenditures right now, as of the end of November, are at 264,000 versus 260, and then 532 in 2019. You're sitting at an unreserved fund balance of 4.3 million.
Before we move on from water and sewer, Stan, we, several months ago, we had addressed the question about the city is unable to collect its sewer fees from those being served by Water District Number 3. And Water District Number 3 had sent a contract over, I think it was April of last year. And by executing that, I believe we would have additional revenues come in from uncollected sewer fees. The issue was we couldn't collect it because city didn't have control of the water meters to be able to turn off the water meters for lack of payment. My understanding was Water District Number 3 is sent over a contract and is willing to participate. And at the time, I believe the response was we needed to coordinate that with who's the other water company that we have other than
It's American.
American Water.
Jamie could answer the question best. She's been intricately involved in this with our attorneys and with the,
I believe it's on the agenda.
it should be
For
coming up real
February.
quick, February agenda, I think. So we finally got it figured out where, what we were going to do regarding the, if I recall correctly, it was how to send out the notice, because the two water companies have a different system. So we had to find middle ground between the two systems to be legal, from our attorney's perspective, on making legal notification to the individual that their water would be shut off if they failed to do a certain thing that could be held as a legal notification in the court system.
So we had to
Did I-
go through changing our code a little bit in order to do that, and that's going to be coming before the board in February, and that process is well on its way, hopefully.
Did I misunderstand then? Because I thought we had signed that agreement with American.
The one with American is signed.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And now getting this one done with Water District 3 is what we'd been working on. And Water District 3 has a different notification system than American Water, and we have a different notification system than both of them. And when we looked at what Water District 3 wanted us to do, it did not meet with our codes, and it did not meet with what American Water was doing. So we had to not manipulate, but we had to come up with a system that the court would accept as legal notification. So quite frankly, the city didn't get sued for turning off someone's water without proper notification. And that's been done now with the two different water districts to coordinate basically one simple platform. And it was a little difficult getting them to agree to that one platform.
Keith, it's hot in here. Okay, just checking. Okay, okay, so we'll move on then. That's a look at your water sewer, and then the next of them are your internal service funds, and that's your internal service funds for water sewer, 601, and then you have your public safety, police and fire internal service funds. You have a parks internal service fund, one for the general fund as well. So, we want to show this to you so that you can track it. Typically, that money comes out of those main funds and goes into here, and then the expenses come out of there as well. Just remember, when you're looking at internal service funds, as we're going through our audit preparation and those things for the year-end audit for 2021, it's really important for you all to remember this as well. Those internal service funds are looked at as a proprietary fund. And so when you look at the year-end audit and it's brought before you all and you look at that, you'll see there is a financial statement inside that comprehensive financial report that shows you water, sewer, and it shows you your proprietary funds. The proprietary funds is your water, sewer, and all of your internal service funds, which all roll up into one for your year-ending financial report, okay? But we like to show you the breakdown, to show you each fund and how we track each fund. But at the end of the year, for governmental financial reporting and proprietary financial reporting, we have to roll all those up into one to show you how the outcome of that. So that's just a note for y'all for the future. Okay, and that's a look at, well, we'll keep going. That is a look at your income statements. The next one is your operating fund balance. This is your cash report. This is a report that we created many, many years ago to show you the cash and the amount of cash that you have versus what is in the bank and what we're reporting to you on the financial statements so that you can have a reconciliation that the amount of cash that you're being reported to on your reports is the amount that we have in the bank. And so we have the public safety is split out, the tourism is split out, and then the, what we call our savings cash account has all the other funds in it. And so that's where we land today. That's why we show you this. One of the things that I always tell you is that you can link all three of these reports together, your income statement, your balance sheet, and your cash by fund. Make sure that your fund balance for the income statement and your balance sheet tie. And if they don't ask, there's two funds that they won't because of those minor funds that I tell you about. That's your police and your general fund, and they have minor funds involved in those, and we do reconcile that. And then the cash by fund also agrees back to your balance sheet through the cash line item. So when you're reviewing these, keep that in mind and look at it. If you have any questions, please let us know. And then that's your balance sheet, that's your cash by fund. And so unless there's any questions, we can move on in an effort to try to get everything in on the agenda. The next one is I brought the highway, the 175 fund, per the request of you all. Y'all kind of wanted to see that. We present this on a monthly basis. We typically try to get it out to the CID board around the 25th to the end of the month, and then we discuss their financials in that CID board meeting. But here, this is the 175. This is how the SID district for the 76 is doing. So the total revenues are at $4.4 million. 2020, they were at $463,000, and then 2019, $403,000. Keeping in mind, the $4 million is as a result of the annexation of the entire project. 2020 and 2019 were just a segment, okay? So total expenditures are at $62,000 for, as of the end of November, at $91,000 in 2020, and 2019 was at $73,000. And you can keep scrolling, please. And then your other financing sources at $1.7 million versus $165 both years. Remember that $1.2 million, that was for the undergrounding. That was the agreements that we went through. That also reduced the amount of debt that they owe back to the tourism, okay? And then they are sitting at about a fund balance of $4.4 million. Any questions on that one? Okay, we'll keep moving then. The next ones are just informational reports, so we don't really have to spend a lot of time unless you have questions. We just like to show you the business licenses and the contractor's licenses and the breakdowns of those. We also like to show you the RFPs, since procurement is in our office as well, all the RFPs and RFQs that we've put out this year. And we did true that up to December, so you can see all of that. And then the next report is your consumption. That's your water consumption, your irrigation consumption, and sewer. So these are all reports that we've used in the past. This year we started bringing them to you in 2021, just in case y'all wanted to see them as well. So unless you have any questions, we'll keep moving on that one. You can keep scrolling, and then I think the next one is disbursements. And I believe we have to have approval on this, don't we?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it.
Okay. The next one is the project status report. Not much change going on here, except for the undergrounding. You can see we put that on there as well, so the 2021 additions of the 1.2. As that project gets up and running in the next year, you're going to see more and more and more activity on this report. So I would encourage you to just really start watching it. You will start to see how we track that, okay? Okay, that's it for that one. Do we want to move on to the next item? Okay. This next item is a per request, okay? So this was requested that we bring before as an agenda item to discuss, to have a discussion today, to talk about really the needs of the city. The 7% wage increase for all employees and a 4% wage increase for directors. That's at a discussion level right now, because that's an ongoing operating expense. But what we want to show you is that in the environment we are facing, we are being told all these other cities are doing all of these large wage increases, even box stores are, school districts are, municipalities, counties are. And so in an effort to remain competitive, how do we keep up? How do we maintain the great staff that we have right now? And how do we pay for it? Okay, so those are all discussion items on the agenda today, because we need to bring this before you because it is a huge concern. It's a huge concern everywhere. But it seems like in the last couple of months, we've been inundated with this discussion. So it's only fair to bring it before this finance committee, to have this discussion, to get your thoughts, and to find out what you think in regards to that. Anybody want to start that discussion?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we do these proposed salary increases, is that going to get us up to a competitive level? Or are we still going to be underpaid compared to peers?
I'm going to throw out two things. First, we are also working on a difficult, so many committees, but the HR committee right now is working on a manpower study. We're going to actually be able to present the RFQ for that earlier this month, but due to COVID issues, we had to cancel that meeting. It's set now for the first part of February, I believe it is. So we'll be moving forward with that. Secondly, and this is kind of the challenge that we're facing, and I will just answer your question with what Chief Matthews and I had a discussion the other day. We can afford so much. We know we're going to have to, and even this proposal will require us to actively and aggressively try to locate revenue source. I was talking to Jeff, and I said, Jeff, I wanted you to know that we're going to work with the board, and right now we can afford a 7% across the board raise for all of our regular employees and a 4% increase for directors and assistant directors. He said, Stan, that's great, appreciate it, but I want you to know that that takes us up to, and I can't recall the figure, I'll let him come down. And he said, Taney County just increased their pay to starting deputies making $19.26 an hour.
The 7% would put us 26 cents an hour below entry level at Taney County for road deputies.
That's what I wanted to share. So it is an ongoing battle. Yesterday, Rick Ziegenfuss told me that they're giving their employees an 18% across the board raise.
They're doing that in phases,
Yeah.
August and January,
August and
correct?
January,
Yep.
correct. Now, when I say 7%, 4%, I would like to also make sure everybody remembers that we also did a 3% merit increase. And I would also like to everyone to remember that we did do the stipend as well. Now, the stipend, of course, does not affect their ongoing salary. It's just that I could look at Kendall back there, and Kendall will tell you he's losing folks to the utility departments up in Springfield because they pay considerably more than we can afford to pay, quite honestly, because they do their own rates. Does this get us there? No. But is it something we need to do for our employees until we can really get a plan to come up with an overall funding package? Yes. It's a Band-Aid. It's not a permanent fix. Something else that is at the HR committee level that we're working on is a pay plan. This fits in that pay plan that Jan developed, but because of what we have seen, thanks to COVID, thanks to our economy, and it's interesting, yesterday I was involved in a conversation regarding unemployment and people workforce and what we don't have and what we need to do. And I found out that there are a lot of employers out there now that are paying cash on the side to even people that are supposedly on unemployment, and that's become an issue. It's a challenge. It's a challenge that I think we've talked about, and I know we're trying to address, and there are going to be some tough decisions. And I, again, think that those decisions will be aided greatly by the group that you all ask us to put together with your input, and not ours, where we have citizens from our community that are actually going to help us decide what we want to keep, what services we want to keep, and what the community is willing to do to keep us a shining jewel, in my opinion. And that all starts with these employees.
So Jamie, when we worked on the budget and it was approved for the merit increase, those are not automatic, those are at an anniversary date and are spread across the system based on, okay,
Yes, that's correct. The merits are based on anniversary date.
yeah. And so this in particular would be more of a one-time adjustment. If
It would
something like
be.
this moved forward, it would not necessarily be tied to.
It would be a wage increase across the board, whenever you all told us to do that.
And we have this in the budget to do this, correct?
It is not in the budget to do this at this time.
We would have to do a budget amendment. Financially, we feel very comfortable that we can afford this for the next 2 years. But again, it's the city, we have got to find revenue sources to continue to ongoing cost. And I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you, we have no idea what's going to happen with healthcare, with our insurance rates. But we do know that to keep employees, we are going to have to remain competitive in salaries. Jamie and I sat and talked about this at length. We know that it is a difficult issue, but if we don't, the issue is we don't have employees. So.
Well, we sit here and we always talk about our most valuable asset at the city. And I've heard the mayor say it multiple times. I've heard each person sitting here talk about our most valuable assets are our associates. And so I do think this is something that every company is having to look at and address and try to figure out because everybody's losing good employees. Because someone down the street's willing to pay more because they have to have the talent there. So, I think figuring out where this gets us and then figuring out where we need to go next is going to be really, really important, and then figuring out how we're going to fund that going forward. Those are just the big rocks that we're going to have to look at, and we're going to have to figure it out, that we cannot operate a city this size with the number of visitors that come without employees. So,
One of the big challenges, and Cindy left the room, but we don't get our seasonal employees hardly at all anymore. That's because we don't pay what the rest of the world's paying. So that's something else we have to look at. Make no mistake here. These are the things that do cause my stomach to do flip-flops and cause me not to sleep at night. If I could, I would bring us up. Every employee deserves a livable wage, and I would be making a recommendation of probably, to be fair, a 12% increase, but I simply can't afford that.
So part of this puzzle too is we've been talking about retention, but recruitment's also an important part, right? So that's makes it difficult, especially with the limited labor pool.
So in terms of timing, what are your thoughts in terms of timing? We've got the numbers put together. We know basically the wage increases at this request, and then the additional expenses to the city for those wage increases, like your loggers' contributions and your taxes and those kind of things. We know it's going to be about a $1.1 million across all funds, and we know by fund how much it's going to cost. And so we would just have to, just from a financial position, what we would do is if you all wanted us to take that before the board, implement that, those things, then what we would do is we would do a budget amendment for those, and we would bring that budget amendment before the board for discussion. But the other thing that we need to think about on this is as far as paying, what are we going to do? At this point, for discussion, the budget amendment would have to come out of the fund balance, okay? Just full disclosure on that. So in terms of timing, what are your thoughts?
Hey, Jamie, have a
Yes.
question. On that federal 10% for the fire safety that happened in '21, I believe we said there's another one coming in '22, is that correct?
That's correct. If the board is approving of that, yes, that is coming. Timing, we're not sure of. Last time we got it in September. We have been hearing that we were planning on getting that in June, but until it hits our bank, I won't say that for sure, okay?
And
So
then
I'm not
this,
sure timing.
This 4.7 is across the board? And
Yes,
so the
this will be a
merit stays
wage
in play?
increase. Yes, it'll be a wage increase, so you have to consider that next year it'll grow. And you can pretty much consider the 3% merit wage increase and then the loggers and all of that. So you have to consider all of that. But yes, this is a wage increase. It'll increase their wages and it'll grow on an annual basis. Okay.
Hey, thank you. And I just wanted to share a thought I have. When you were going over the bond being paid off in January and the waterfall effect from the landing over to the Branson Hills, who else in the world can put this together but you and for this board to approve that? That is just amazing coming out of this economy.
Thank you for that. We appreciate that.
I have a few comments. Our employees here is our largest asset. In fact, it's our only asset because without the employees here and their contribution, this is nothing but a physical structure. And I think it needs to be treated that way. A couple questions I would have. Stan, is the, this 7%, 4 and 7% is last year we come up with a Band-Aid using the stipend money, the stipend. Instead of the Band-Aid approach, and I believe that was one, give or take, $1 million. Instead of applying that Band-Aid approach, what if we took that same $1 million and look at how can we give a larger increase than this? I'm going to sit here and tell you, well, I guess one question would be, how is the 4 and 7% generated? Because what I'm also hearing, and I heard it from Chief Matthews, and I think it goes across the board, even if we agreed to the 4 and 7%, we're still below the market out there. So, can we revisit this and find ways to provide a higher increase than the 4 and 7%? Inflation is not just a term out there. It affects every single employee in our city. So if inflation's 7% and they get a 7% raise, they broke even, right? And that's not just for our city, that's for all employees. For us to recruit and maintain the quality of staff that we have, I would sure like to find ways to exceed this, quote, minimum 7%. I just don't think the 7% goes far enough.
Amen. I completely agree with you. Again, and I think that's where we're looking from a broader perspective of the group that this board, quite frankly, put together to try to find additional revenues and try to look at possible cuts that we could make. And my challenge with, I think you're talking about what we would do with the second stipend payment.
Yes.
The problem is it's a one-time expense, and it can't help us fund ongoing expenses. The money that we are putting in, the 7 and 4, is something that, yeah, it will bring our reserves down some, but we talk about, you all talk about between that 30 and 20% that we're mandated at 20. We try to keep it at 30. We would probably be at right in the 29, 28% ongoing. That stipend fund can only help us for 1 year. So it's going to take some tough decisions. And what I would say is this 7 and 4, I would ask that you do it now. And then as we grow and come up with other suggestions, we can always come back and then adjust it higher. And that's what we want to do. But our employees, and I know for recruitment, Kendall and Jeff need the money now. So we're trying to do what we can at this moment, and then as we move forward, address the problem ongoing.
So would our directors and our employees, and for recruitment and retention purposes, would it be a fair statement to say, if this 7% was approved across the board, knowing we're going to be having that stipend, anticipating that stipend this year of 5%, is the math, each employee would actually be receiving a 12% increase for the year of 2022?
Correct, plus what we would get, a regular employee would get 7%. Dependent upon merit, there's an opportunity for another 3. I will be candid here. The vast majority of our employees get 2.5. And then with the stipend for emergency services, that was 10%, and the rest of the city, it was 5%. So those funds would build into that. I'm not sure exactly what the percentage would be, but I think that would be something that they would be able to sell. And it's a whole lot better than what we have right now. And it's just, I've got to come up with something that's fair. That's what we kind of landed on this. It's fair to the city while we're trying to find additional funds to increase what we need to do to take care of the employees. And I appreciate your all support. I know the mayor and the board have been very active on trying to come up with additional funds, not just for the employees' salaries, but also looking at health care and insurance and everything else. Their number one priority have been our citizens, and I want to thank you all. Our employees to help our citizens, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, we are going to be having several meetings to address the revenue side. And it's one thing to make the statement, boy, we're going to have to make tough decisions. But when you get in the room, having to make those tough decisions is where the rubber meets the road. So Kendall, with a 7% increase, with the 5% stipend, with the average 2.5% merit increase, at least for the year 2022, what I'm understanding is that's going to be, give or take, a 14% increase for employees in your department.
So let me start by saying it would be a start. Put it in a little bit of perspective. So, our entry-level position starts out at roughly $14.50 per hour. So 7%, you're going to add another $1 to that. So you're looking at an entry-level utility worker that's out in the trenches doing that type of work. You're looking at roughly around $15.50 per hour.
Okay. Yeah.
When you've got competitive places, that in our area that other water companies that start off at $18 and $20 an hour. So I'm just saying that it's a start. Will it help with recruitment? Yes, I think a little bit. But again, to get to that competitive standpoint, I think we need to go much higher. I know that's hard to swallow as a community, I mean, I was throwing numbers out there of 30 to 40% just to get us to a point of being competitive. For example, we used to lose water treatment operators to city utilities constantly when positions came open. City utilities doesn't have much vacancies up there because they do pay their people very well. For example, their operators make anywhere between $25 to $30 an hour, where we're in that $15 to $20 an hour range. So there's a huge difference there that has affected us for several years. We've been trying to grasp the ground of trying to make that up. But again, with COVID and everything that's happened, it's just really highlighted even more at this point. It's getting challenging to get people to come, and in this day and age, you know, with the whole virtual world, folks realize there's other opportunities out there besides coming to work at a physical location, let alone outdoors in all kinds of weather environments and dealing with, you know, water and sewer issues, that it's a whole lot easier job for them. I mean, it's challenging.
You said city utilities. You talking about up in Springfield?
Yeah. So
What are their rates though?
well,
as compared
so
to
you
ours?
got to consider city utilities is a private company for water up there, and then you got the city of Springfield that handles their public works aspect of streets, stormwater, and sewer systems. So it's two different entities up there. But again, they recognize the need to keep, you know, folks retained and on the water side, and they've done very well up there.
Are their rates comparative to ours though, or are they charging a lot higher?
They're charging more, obviously. If we add them on our comparison yearly, we have those numbers, I believe. So, but they are up there, you know, quite a bit more as far as rate increases. But so for the, you know, utilities department, it's just a matter of, you know, community support and raising rates. I mean, we have that ability to come up with that revenue source. It's got to have that support.
Okay, so, and we don't need to get into the details of the math, but I think, if my math is close, the 7%, the 5%, the 2.5%, it would take a $14.50 an hour up to, give or take, $16.50 an hour.
Just remember that 5% doesn't increase the wages, though.
No, I'm saying that's
Okay.
just for 2020, well,
You know what I'm
5% would
saying?
go to the wages.
It would be a one-time event.
One-time,
So it
just-
wouldn't increase their wages.
I'm talking
Does that make
just
sense?
2022, yes. So even at that, even at, for 2022, $16.50 an hour, what I'm hearing you say is that is not going to be competitive for your world.
I think it will help in the situation to attract some folks here. But again, the challenge on operating utility is attracting folks that have either previously been in the field, that have the experience. When we lose seasoned workers, we have to, it takes several years
That's
to gain that knowledge
expensive.
back.
That's expensive, yep.
And two, so then your services start to suffer a little bit. You don't have quick response times for, you know, water main repairs, things like that nature, because you're having to train folks all over again. So the value of attracting folks in here that have that experience, you're going to have to pay more.
You bet, you bet.
But we're willing to train folks with good character and you know, that are willing to come to work and are engaged and have a great attitude, you know, to want to work for the city. We'll build those skills up, but you got to have a balance of if you're training all new people, your services start to suffer a little bit.
Okay.
Jamie, I have a question. When we look at salary, do we take into account total benefit package? That is a big deal where I work, because we look at base salary and then vacation and, you know,
That's a huge, great question.
And I mean, so when you look at it, the total benefits package, are we competitive in our benefit package with other, with the other companies that are pulling our people away.
And I would say that is the difference between working for government and working for private. We do offer a very, very good benefit package. And so you have to consider that when you're looking at it all. Yes, I believe our wages are very low in almost all categories. Some maybe not, but you got to look at the categories and the work that is provided. So yes, but the benefit package is huge and it's great. We have the top retirement package for government workers. We do really well with our insurance, and I think you all have done a great job of keeping our insurance alive and on top. So that is something significant, and it's about 30% for us. So you just can't look at the wages. Although we do need work at the wage level, you also have to bring in an additional benefit package that is on top. And the other thing I will say is, when you're looking at private companies versus government companies, you have to really take into consideration what's being provided, what the income levels are, what the workload is versus what we have to do. Listen, I am top. I believe the employees need a much greater increase, so no argument, no question there. My only concern is how to pay for it, and what are the next steps, okay? So certainly, I'm excited about where this year is going and what everything, different items have been put into place and different committees that have been put into place to move forward to help resolve that. Does it happen overnight? No, and so I think we need to consider that too, but I would believe that this is a start. One thing I do want to make you all aware of is keep in mind that if you draw down your fund balance for the salaries this year, then next year you have less, and then it'll keep going down year over year significantly if we don't do something now to offset the real problem, okay? That was just my note for that.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this committee if they would agree to something like, this is the proposal, timing's important. How would this committee feel if we agreed to make this recommendation to the board with the understanding that it will be an agenda item? We're going to readdress this in, say, 6 months, in June. By June, a couple things will have happened. We will have our staffing study from HR completed, so we'll have a much better grasp of what we're really dealing with. I feel that this is almost a knee-jerk response, but it's needed. And it'll give us time to have some real hard discussions about increasing revenues for our city. I feel strongly that the community that we're in, our budget has been in, it's like every year, we're almost in survival mode, right? We're talking about what expenses we have to reduce. I would, addressing the revenue side, I would like to see us have a budget that's thriving, not surviving. Today, we don't know how close we can get there, if we can make those movements, but I think, Kendall, if we agree to this with the understanding citywide that we understand this is not the final result, but this Finance Committee and the Board of Aldermen are going to readdress this and take another serious look in 6 months.
Well, and I'll piggyback on what Kendall said. It's a start, and I know in my position as a Board of Aldermen, a member of this committee and a member of the HR committee, this is a start, but I'm going to ensure that we keep this top of agenda in each of those entities. Because we need to, I mean, like you said, it's a start, which puts it in motion, but we need to keep this top of line all the time.
Just real quick, I just want to say I'd fully support that.
Thank you very much. So,
Jamie, sorry.
go ahead.
Just for clarification on this, so if we say, which I think, I agree with what you're saying, I mean, we need to look at this bigger picture and address the overall issue, but I also think getting something done that we can do quickly and get into the hands of employees is also important. So if I'm understanding it correctly, if this moves forward, the board approves it, it would be a budget amendment that would simply just reduce what I think I always refer to as the rollover amount, the excess amount. So we're required to have the 20%, we stay at 30, and you and I had that conversation a couple months ago. So this would just reduce that. So we're still above where we need to be. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I assume this also changes the amount of the ARPA funds because we'd have to calculate, I know we don't get additional ARPA funds, but what I'm saying is we'd have to calculate those stipends based on increased
It will,
wages.
yeah, at the time that, I'm sorry, Stan, were you?
No, he's correct, that it will basically increase what we will have to pay from our
Yeah.
side of the table.
So,
Yes.
okay, so, and the last time we did that in November, we came in a little under. Or
Yes, we
fairly
did.
close to that amount.
Correct.
And so if we're over this time, assuming we keep those levels the same,
And we can work with those levels too. I mean, if that's something that, if we put that in, a couple of questions, just really quickly, just for my direction. One, we want to get this calculated into the board as soon as possible is what I'm hearing. When do you want those wages, if they're passed, to go into effect? What would be your recommendation there so that we can put it into our report? The other thing is, at the time that we get those stipends, typically what we do, just for the way we have to calculate it, is it is effective the night that y'all approve of it. So whatever those wages are at that point in time, and whoever's working at that point in time, that's how those percentages will be calculated, and that's how we'll project them and bring those projections to y'all. So you can work with the 5%. You could give everybody a 7% across the board, and that would level it out some because of the raises we had. That is up to you. We could bring you options, certainly.
well, I just don't want to, if we're sitting here today saying, well, let's do
Overdo it.
this, and then we're going to have the 5 to 10% later on
Thank
this
you.
year.
Yes.
I don't want to come back at that time and it be, well, it's going to cost us an additional however many hundreds of thousands of dollars, so we can't do that now. If the understanding is, hey, that's going to be part of this sort of 2022 compensation deal, so, and obviously we don't know what the board will look like, after the elections this year, and so I know we can't commit anybody in anything, but that's my only concern is I think we should do this, and I've always supported doing those stipends as soon as we get that money, as long as it's not a thing where when that comes in, we recalculate it based on the increased wages, and now it's like, okay, well, maybe we can't do that, or we don't have that extra money, because we've kind of said today that's part of the deal here. So and I don't know if that would even be a concern. I'm just voicing mine.
It could be, and it just depends on the percentages. So that is something that, at that time, I'm hopeful that we get it to June, so it's not so close to the end of the year, so it doesn't cause us a little bit more difficulties in that area. But if we do, we'll bring it back and maybe have that discussion. But it will affect as soon as we put these into effect, pending the board approves of it. Then it'll be based off of what their wages are at that time.
And to be, we've been working on this for 5 months. This is what we feel comfortable with because we know that we had a great year, yes, and so we have some additional cash available to us for 2022. And it's why, quite frankly, I didn't walk in here and say, let's give everybody a 12% raise. And it's why, quite frankly, I could have walked in and said, everybody across the board 7% raise, and I didn't agree with that because the directors, they make more, so that affects that as well. I want to be fair to everybody, but I've also got to be fair to our community and not overtax our budget. So I've thought about the stipend option, the stipend issue as well, and it's just a matter of, this year will be fine, but we've got to come up with something going forward.
Okay, I would entertain a motion for this committee to take this recommendation to the next Board of Aldermen meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it.
Ruth has come in, and it looks like we might be a chair short, and she doesn't have a place to sit, so can we scoot down? Hate for her to have to sit over there. You're welcome.
Slide you right up in here. Okay.
Going this way, all right.
Come on down my way.
Okay, next agenda item?
The next agenda item, I have asked Jeff to come up and speak about, and it's about their Raffle Program. And I wanted him to explain it to y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. The Rifle Program, this is a revisit from, I think we started this process last year, maybe the end of the year before. We brought it to the Finance Committee saying that we wanted to provide our officers the ability to purchase a rifle that the city buys outright up front, and then the officers reimburse the city over 26 pay periods for that rifle. We issue a lot of equipment to officers. A rifle is something that is unique to that officer. I control what that rifle looks like, what it's capable of doing in that through policy, and regulate how that rifle can be worked on and all of that through policy. But the officers, when we brought this to the Finance Committee, I think there was some discussion on, well, why don't we as a city buy those rifles and allow the officers to use those? We took that information back to the officers, and the officers, quite frankly, told us, we really want to buy our own. We want that rifle so that it goes with us when we leave the city. So we've worked with legal, we've got the contract, the reimbursement plan, all of that. It's just a matter of getting it before you and the board so that we can get those funds released. When we originally brought this to the board, to the Finance Committee, whenever it was last year, whatever, there was a dollar figure of $40,000 for the rifles, and then another amount of money for ammunition, storage, things like that. Those prices with inflation have gone up, and quite frankly, if you vote today to release the funds, I don't know how long it's going to take for us to be able to even get the rifles in stock because everybody is backed up right now.
So I want to make it right, because I think I was the one last year that asked the questions about us buying for them and didn't understand the importance of it. So I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
So, hold on, let's have some discussion. Chief, so is the proposal that the officers would have a choice where they could agree that they would, out of their paycheck, they would pay so much and then they would own the rifle? Do they have a choice of, if they chose not to purchase it, that they would have the use of that weapon as long as they were employed here without paying for it?
No. But what this plan does provide us the opportunity to do is take our current stock of rifles, which are Mini 14s. We share sights on those. Whoever takes the car next gets that rifle, gets that rifle, gets that rifle. This plan allows us to take those rifles and trade them for shotguns so that we have a shotgun and a rifle option. Quite frankly, we had about 3 or 4 officers that said, Chief, I really don't feel comfortable in carrying a rifle. Everybody qualifies on it, but we have some officers that say, I really don't feel comfortable. I would prefer a shotgun. So this option provides us a dual rack in the police car so that we have a shotgun and we have a rifle, because there's different needs for both tools.
Yeah, and I guess what I was trying to address was, are there any officers, in other words, I don't want to force it on them. And I don't know what other police departments do. I don't know if every police department out there makes their officers purchase their own rifles. I was just hoping there would be an option for recruitment, retention, to remove that element of, if you hire in, here's the programs, and you must pay for your own rifle.
Sure. With current budget dollars, I can look at a hybrid program so that we could purchase some of those rifles and have them to issue them out. But that's not what the survey results from when we talked to our officers said. They actually told us they wanted to buy the rifles.
Okay.
Is this interest-free? Like, is there a?
18%. No.
Yeah, Jamie is nodding. Yes.
Essentially, it would just be, we fund it up front, and over 26 pay periods, they pay for the costs that we did. So we wouldn't gain any interest or anything off of that, and it would really be a direct reimbursement. So the city would only be out up front, and then we would get the money back in the 26 pay periods.
I assume there's some, since it's a bulk buy, maybe there's some savings versus just going to the store and buying
There
on
would
your
be.
own. So it's probably
would
good,
be.
win-win for everybody.
And when you look at where we are as officers, making a purchase of an AR-15 is a big deal in the family budget. Extending that over 26 pay periods where you're talking $100 a month or whatever that is, I think the cap on this is $2,000. So do the math on that over 26 pay periods. It makes it feasible for most of our officers to get that rifle.
And I understand the officer's point of view. A good rifle or shotgun is almost as important as your wife. You like to sleep with it sometimes too. So, but I understand where they're coming from. So,
Are there any other committee members feel that there's any importance of at least having the option out there if there's a police officer that would prefer not to have to purchase their weapon, but it is a needed tool for them to do their job, that they wouldn't be forced to pay for that?
So my thought on that is that based on your answer to begin with is they would have shotguns that are available, so that would suffice, and there's really no need to spend additional city funds to buy automatic rifles. Because part of this was trying to get out of that, that ongoing cost and stuff too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the whole principle behind this is to move us beyond shared sites on shared rifles so that we don't have that liability with us. To the mayor's point about what other agencies do, there's a myriad of things that agencies do, all the way from purchasing and issuing to shared sites, to the purchase reimbursement that we're talking about, and then some departments don't even offer rifles and just have the shotguns. So I think we're developing a program that meets our needs based on what our officers are telling us and what our finances allow us to do.
Yeah, and I understand that. My mindset is I just hate to force somebody to purchase something if that's not their preference. And in this specific case, this is a tool of the trade, right? I wouldn't ask a fireman to go purchase a fire hose. I mean, he needs that for his job. Police officers need the rifles. So if that option was available, I would feel better with that. I'm not sure where the committee's at, but we'll follow your lead. Thank you. Do you want a motion on this?
Just, recommendation, yep.
We had a motion.
Yes.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Same sign, doesn't have it. Motion carries. Next item.
Keith? The next item is the HVAC, so this is more capital related, and we had the RFQs out there, and so we've sent those out a few weeks ago for you all to review, and I want him to discuss the process. Thank you.
Good morning. This is for the revisions of our, and upgrading of our HVAC system. In the PD department, let's see, about all of PD is heated by these wall heaters, and most of finance is. These heaters are very old, and the chiller unit and the boiler unit are dinosaurs. We can't even get parts for our boiler anymore. So this is a chance for us to upgrade the system to get it up to today's technology. And so we went out for RFQs for design services for this type of system. This would completely get rid of the boiler, get rid of the chiller. We'd have an empty room down there in PD, basically, where our breaker panels are. So these are different types of units, which, for example, for like this office over here, it would maybe have one or two units that mount in the ceiling tiles. Are very quiet, very efficient. a lot more so than what this boiler is, because I know that boiler just makes that electric meter spin down there. These are all electric. They just have small heat bars, heat coils in them, and the type of units we're looking at. So this is for the design services for that. Then we will, after we get the design plan done, we'll go out for bid for it. So this is our grading of the the qualifications we got in which you all should have gotten those to review and everything. So we're here to listen to your comments or questions. I'll try to answer, and whatever you all recommend for the design company is what we will pursue to negotiate the contract with.
Keith, is this in the budget? Is this a budgeted item?
So Keith, based on the information that you've provided, then if you go through all of the scores and you go down to the bottom of the very final, then your recommendation would be to go with who scored the highest, which would be, is that Miko?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And the whole thing that kicked this off is we've got a, Mike in here, yeah, Mike, is a 3-inch or 4-inch water main in the PD ceiling? 2-inch in there. But anyway, when they pull the insulation off of the old water line that carries the hot water and the cold water back and forth, it pulled the biggest chunk of the metal off of this steel line.
Stop taking the insulation off.
Yeah, so we don't touch it anymore. We almost thought this was gonna have to be an emergency purchase, because if that water line breaks down there, it's gonna flood everything in the PD area. So that's why we're moving forward with this. We put it in the budget.
Sounds like it's needed. Any comments from anybody on the committee?
Sorry. When I read the memo you prepared, I paid particular attention to the references, and so I appreciate you guys, doing your due diligence on that. And so I think, based on the size of these other entities that they had worked with, that I think that bodes well, and seems like they'll do a good job. So the references, I thought, kind of supported your guys' recommendations, so I'm happy to follow through.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that the RFQs that we received were all good, and I support your decision, and I'd make a recommendation for approval.
You want to make a motion?
Yeah.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you all.
The next one is for the fire design, the fire station design. Ted, you want to come up and explain that for us?
Excuse me, Ted. Before you start, break. So let's recess for about 7 minutes. We'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you.
I couldn't wait for your 7 minutes.
It's right here, so I put it out here.
We're gonna have a pool down there.
How's the Romans doing? We're good. Good. Hanging in.
Multifocal contact lenses. It's taking me a bit. I love it.
Anything going on for
But
this winter?
sometimes I'll
Tons of stuff,
Under Armour's knocking out the wall, we're on 15,000 square feet, got a restaurant going in, side entrance over there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know. That's why I had to go to the multifocal, because I found myself taking one set of glasses off, putting another set on. I couldn't do that anymore. So I was like,
Good morning, my dear.
how are you? Well.
Hydration is good.
I don't know what's driving me crazy with allergies lately.
Pardon?
I don't know what's going on with the allergies lately. I think
Oh.
usually it's mold that'll get me or cedar, those two things.
I've been fighting everything. So I had 2 rounds of antibiotics, been to the doctor twice, just croup and carry on. Rick's about ready to throw me out of the house.
She knows. I flipped with it almost as much as I have hers.
What does he want? Yes. You think we're gonna let people come to our pool without lifeguards? No. I didn't know people wanted to work my son and go somewhere else to get it. Your son's gonna do it never. Well, let my daughter do it. I'm gonna tell my wife. So we don't love to do that. We do have like a fee in that we're charging money. We'll do it as part of our own people. It's kind of tricky. I mean, I can talk to Carly about it if that's what you want.
No, I just needed, when they said you're short-staffed, my son needs to.
Then he needs to get a job with us and he'll be trained. Oh, just have him come to the job fair. Like in March. And he'll just charge you for his time.
You got that right. So anyway, I think he'd be a good employee.
Well, I'll get you the job. Everything happens that day. Yeah. How old is he? Well, we sent a text. I'm so sorry for being late. My sister is in the hospital. I was on the phone. I will. Ed, you're on.
No worries.
Yeah. So on both those, how about that?
And I think that's a reasonable price. They would like to participate. An officer of the SID. Seeing design. He's wanting to.
Closet jobs. That's probably better. Things were not coming really fast enough.
It's very, yeah, yeah. That they have everybody's, yeah.
Well, for
No, I think
Walker.
it's important because that way because it is part of finance all the way. This group supports that too, so yeah.
No.
missing a few. Call this meeting back to order. Ted, where were you?
With an opening statement of, I'm pretty excited to be here today on behalf of the firefighters in the community for this topic. It's a long time coming, and it's a need to fulfill our commitment to the southwest side of the city, for sure.
Yes, Ruth and I are excited that this is in Ward 3, so.
From a historical perspective, you know, we have the 3 current fire stations as the city continued to grow in the 90s, particularly in the early 2000s. We saw that growth rapid to the southwest side. When we passed the public safety tax, we were able to purchase 9.6 acres near the Hvac Resort with cash, so there's no debt on that, correct? And then we started to move forward with design in March of 2020, right when COVID hit, and to protect our community, we halted that contract. When I say the community, the city and the finances. And that was probably a hard decision, but a very wise one to do. With where we are today, everybody in our team of the city feels comfortable coming back to you, and we've gone back out to RFQs for design professionals. We had 11 firms apply. Ryan has a complete procurement process to go out local and regionally and across the Midwest to gain those RFQs. An internal team was established because we received 11 RFQs that you would essentially need to review by code. I hope you understand that we did some pre-work for you and narrowed that down to 3 vendors. One was local, one was in Springfield, and one was in Lenexa, Kansas. The top 3 presented, I think those were presented to you in your packet to look at as well. In fact, all vendors were. The internal review brought us back to a company called Hofer Welker in Lenexa. One of the concerns we had was with the previous vendor was, I'm a little, not quite as conservative as Jamie is, but I'm pretty dang close. Are those expenses for time and travel? And after visiting with this company, we know that they can, with the highway system the way it is today, that one, most work can be done online or on platforms like Teams or Zoom, and then also it's a day travel up and back. And so we feel comfortable that based on the review of the top 3 firms, that they came out on top. A lot of that was based on their pre-work, a lack of change orders. I know I've not really been engaged in big projects like this before as, say, the city engineer and you all in the past. I've heard that message very clearly, not to allow that to be a focus of a project in this community ever again. And they were very solid in that part of it, in their presentation, in their background checks. So background checks were done on the top 3 as well. Some of those hard questions were asked, and that was one of them. And so we're very comfortable with Hofer Welker coming forward as the front team, and we'd like to seek your approval based on our pre-work for you to negotiate with them for a contract. Right now, they're presenting at about 8.15% plus some extra upcharges based on our needs. So as you see in the packet, maybe, for example, if we want to harden part of the building for severe weather, it's a $14,000 design fee. There's geotech and some other areas that we've had our engineer team internally look at. Some work has already been done, some work that they can do here, so we feel very comfortable that we can keep the additionals. I call it like buying that new car, and you pay a few more dollars for power windows and sunroof, and those are things that we have to be very, very careful about. What can be done internally or done prior or not needed at all. So that internal team has been a big help to narrow that down. So total project proposed cost would put you in the, and forgive me, I just had that in front of me. Initially, when we did this, we looked at a $3 million budget, not to exceed 11,000 square feet for the fire station. In comparison, Station 2 and 3 are around I believe, 7,000 square feet. We're upsizing the bays, so we don't have to squeeze in so tight on the current fleet that we have and what we'd like to stage down there. But with today's world, we came back when we were able to open this back up again and asked to increase that to $3.5 million because of construction cost in there. And we kept our square footage, our footprint down, and I think we'll be under that 11,000 square feet. So their proposal puts you right at $285,000 plus the charges that if we chose to go that route, the additional, like the storm shelter, if there are permitting processes, which we're not going to charge ourselves a permit fee, so that fee would not be in there. Any DNR permitting, they've given us options on what to do about furniture, just do a footprint, or do we do it in-house? We have a great team in-house with our firefighters that we've bought firefighter furniture before, firehouse furniture, we bought cabinets before. I've got a guy that installed cabinets for a living before he's a fireman. So there's a lot of talent in the Branson firefighters that can support this mission. So we feel comfortable with this pricing, with this contract, and would like to seek permission to move forward.
So when you're asking that, you're asking for this committee to approve it, but it still has to go to the Board of Aldermen, is that correct?
Yes, sir. By city ordinance, you have to, this committee has to choose the vendor. I just hope that you accept that we did some pre-work for you, and then we'll be moving forward to the Board of Aldermen for the final process.
You've been here long enough, and I've been here long enough. The figure is 3.5. What will the end figure be?
Well, I would say that my boss and the finance director will tell me I'm not going over that price, period. Comparable to Johnson County, Kansas, Johnson County Fire District 3, I went and toured one of their stations that was built about 3 years ago, just prior to COVID. And in Johnson County, Kansas, if you know that part of the neck of the woods, they bought land, designed, and built for that price, a substantially bigger fire station. So I'm hoping and praying that we can be responsible in fulfilling the needs of that part of the city and remain within that budget.
Any questions from the committee members?
Just a comment, Ted. First and foremost, thank you and everyone who's been involved in this process. It's been a long process, but your due diligence is recognizable by the RFP that went out, the RFQ that went out, and I did have an opportunity to review all of those proposals, and I would agree that Hofer Welker had the most comprehensive proposal, and I would agree with your selection. But thank you for all you've done and everybody else.
Yeah, they really stood out in the reviewing of those, the Hofer Welker.
I know it's difficult to see here, but this is a heat map around Kansas City on the Johnson County, Kansas side, South Kansas City, where I'm from originally. The heat map says they're doing most of the work.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion.
I'll entertain it.
Second.
The motion, I'm assuming, was to go with the recommendation.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ted, thank you very, very much. This has been a long time coming, and nobody needs to tell you that.
We look forward to the next 18 months or so, and I believe your Public Safety Committee folks will be cheering the next time we meet, so excited about that. Thank you.
And I think the residents in Point Royale will be giving a standing ovation. Or they'll say, it's about time.
Ready for the next one? The next one is a mini grant for the outdoor warning sirens. We have done these before, and we just typically like to bring this to you. It's 100% grant funded at no cost for the particular grant, so we just always like to bring these grants for you, show that we applied for them, show that what's going on and how they're going. We will pay for them, they will reimburse us, and so it'll be a zero cost to us, but we always like to keep these in front of you, okay? Keith? Well, I was just going to say, if you had anything to say on this change order, there is no cost dollar for this change order. It was just timing extension for the mill and overlay. And so this is a change order that's a long time coming, but it's because of the timing and those kind of things. So you can see that it was a 90-day extension, and there is no dollar value change. But this is part of our change order process, so we wanted to bring that before you so that you could see that. Again, it's only timing.
That's also, it's been included in our budget.
Yes,
It's
sir.
just a time.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And then the next one is just simply the reports. And so it's really typically at this point in time where we give the finance director report. A couple of things that are coming for y'all is we are looking at, there are a couple of bond issues that have a pretty high interest rate over in the Branson Hills section, and we've already had discussions. One of the things that has kept us from refinancing that up until this point is because the city does not back that debt, which I'm thankful for, but we don't back that debt. But right now, if you look at the market and you know the market, there's a lot of cash-heavy banks that are looking to do something with that cash at this point in time. So we have an opportunity. We've met with some banks already, and we're talking to our financial advisor to talk about what the best option. It's a 7.25% interest, so it's pretty high interest for this day and age. So we're going to do our best to get that way, way down and try to get some interest in helping us do that. So that's what we're looking at right now. And then the other thing is thank you all for submitting the names for that subcommittee that has been created. We sent out the emails. I will tell you, almost everyone, we got more than 20, which was fantastic, and almost everyone has overwhelmingly said, yes, I would love to be a part of helping move the city forward. So just the exercise of being able to facilitate that for me was super, super encouraging to us because of the overwhelming support. Some really great people in our city, and the comments and the support that they gave to, the interest that they gave to help be a part of the city and moving it forward was phenomenal for us to see. So I really appreciated that. And then what's going to happen now is tomorrow we're going to send out like a doodle poll to all of them to see what's the best time for them to start meeting, and then to determine the meeting and how it's going to go, and then what the process is to bring the ideas and the suggestions back before this committee to review it, and then to the board for the final results. So anyway, I just wanted to keep you ahead of the game as to where we were at with that process and the bond refinancing. We are in the middle of doing year end. The audit is coming up. You'll see that engagement letter for those of you who are on the board. I will tell you ahead of time that our audit firm did merge with a much larger firm out of Texas. Really great, same audit team, but it's a much larger and more reputable firm, and they're doing great. So you'll see that coming before you as well. And then we would anticipate field work for the 2021 audit to start end of March, 1st of April, and we're already talking there. So, and that is my report, unless I've missed anything or any of you have anything to say.
I'd just like to have something I'd like to say to this group specifically. I had and I was a little late today because I had a meeting with all my store managers at Tanger. My side gig when I'm not with the Finance Committee, HR, Board of Aldermen, I'm the General Manager of Tanger Outlet Center. So anyway, what I want you all to know is I've seen some receipts, but we haven't yet for December. December was phenomenal as far as sales tax receipts. 2021 as a whole was phenomenal, I think, for most, but I'll highlight some of the Tanger stuff here. For 2021, 52 of our 75 stores had sales totaling over $1 million. 16 of those 52 were 3 million plus. So I just say that to say, yes, we're going to have some, and our sales 21 compared to 19 was up like 15%. So I just want to say that now, woohoo, but no, and as we met this morning, we hope we see that exact same thing in 22, but we know 21 might have been an anomaly. So just keep that top of mind as we go through this stuff. Yes, we've still got a lot of, revenue generation ahead of us and what we need to do, but just realize that we're going to see some good numbers for 21, but we're going to have to work like crazy to see that in 22. And that's just my take on that.
Jamie, would you mind me asking, everybody has their own crystal ball. What is, from Tanger's point of view, what is their projection? What are they looking for 22?
They would love for us to see a 2% increase, but they know that's going to be a challenge. So our stretch is 5%.
Wow.
So
That's still very encouraging. Thank you.
So now we have new stuff coming. I mean, so we've got, there's still interest as far as businesses coming to town. We've got some stores that are going away, but with that, we've got others coming in behind them. Our biggest projects that will be going on this spring is Tommy Hilfiger, who's been here from the beginning, is closing their store in Branson. Under Armour's going to knock out that wall, and our Under Armour store is going to become it'll be our largest store. It'll be 15,000 square feet. Also at the side entrance, Loft is leaving. We're dividing that space, and there'll be a restaurant right there on the end. Chaz Stinnett, that owns Charlie Steak and Ale in town, has a new concept that's going to be called Two Trees Q and Brew, and that will open this summer. So lots of things still going on too, but.
Going to give the guys something to do while the ladies are shopping, is that what you're trying to
I am exactly saying that, and hopefully there's, I can hit happy hour on my way home every night. So.
You can be happy all the time, Jamie.
Any other reports?
I just had one other comment, and Jamie kept things moving so quickly, and you did a great job. Thank you, Jamie, but I wanted to back up and just thank Ted and his department for securing those SEMA grants to replace those outdated sirens. Really appreciate that.
And I just want to briefly share that, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but I didn't ask a lot of questions during our financial reporting. I think just to let you know, I'll be running my questions for the finance department through Stan and John, moving forward.
We have a meeting next week to review the 76 design, right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I have had a request from the SID board that maybe they could be more a part of this process. A request that maybe they come together with the finance committee to review those, and they'd like to be more of a part of the due diligence for the design firm. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
That's one of the other side gigs I have. I serve on the SID board, so no, I think that is important to get these groups together, just from past experiences, what's happened before, and we want to keep this one going forward the best it can be. So I think that'd be a great idea.
Stan, do you have any comments on that?
My only comment would be that, and in discussions with Gail Meyer, I completely understand their involvement because two things. First off, they really have no desire to be involved in the part that we, the city, does regarding sidewalks and duck banks and all that. But we're trying to have the same design firm built in basically to get the the top side done as well. That is their baby, so I think they definitely should be involved in the process, because if we can use the same design firm for all of that, we're going to be money ahead, all of us. So I think it's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second?
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.